Last week, we shared stories and memories of why the cast of Final Fantasy VI is world-class, and we focused on Terra, Locke, Celis, and Cyan. This week, we tackled the balance of the main cast, asking that same important question. Who did we identify with back in the day and now as adults? Time to saddle up our chocobos, venture out into the overworld, and hope that Shadow sticks around for longer than 3 battles. More on that trauma later, as we embark upon episode 112, Final Fantasy VI, Part 7, Even More Connections to an Ensemble Cast. Like last week, we begin this episode with some general thoughts on the game's cast as a whole. Starting us off is music producer Mustin, followed by Tim Knowles, formerly of The Leetist, and then the Let's Play Princess joins us, and finally, cosplayer Yurik.
Changing gears a little bit, talking about characters, which characters did you really connect with in Final Fantasy VI?
Well, as a kid, I mean, I love Shadow, of course. Still do.
Yeah,
the whole ninja, cool. You know, I mean, he's throwing shurikens, and he's got this dog named Interceptor, which is freaking cool. And the way that Amano drew those characters is really great. All the cool stuff, you know, it slit his mama's throat for a nickel. I mean, it just seemed like the baddest dude in town. And such a great theme, like that gave him like this Western theme, and it was just the coolest. Like, so I always, and to this day, he's always my best character. And then, I don't know. I like, who do I like? I think Locke is annoying, you know, kind of a simp and problematic. And same thing with Setzer, is going to steal some girls and problematic. And I like how Sabin is kind of a meathead, and he has some good lines. The relationship between the Figaro boys is it's cool. It's when you activate the right stuff, or you get them to do their stuff, their side story things. It's really nice. And I think Mog is cute. He's not very useful. And I really love the idea of Umaro. I love the idea of the Yeti, but the fact that you can't control him is just too chaotic for me. And I
never used their
chaos. Yeah. So I can't really use him as like his big Yetiness. And then Go-Go, I don't know what their whole thing is, but at least they're a helpful character. The fact I didn't know this. I didn't know this for years, even though I had the daggone book over here. I didn't realize you can go into Go-Go and then change their stuff where you can add in the other characters' functions. And I just kind of like, when I did that the first time, when I realized that, I just slowly panned to a camera that wasn't there and just stared at it. And, and then went back, and I was like, okay, Go-Go has magic, has tools, has throw. And I'm like, oh, now they are the butt kicker, man. Like, this is it. We're in it to win it. But everybody has something. Like, I don't hate anybody, because everybody has, like, there's a part of me in all of those characters. There's a part of those characters in me, right? I mean, I love Realm. It's like sassiness, and Strago's like kind of wildness, you know, white knightness, but in a good way, and trying to best his own demons, you know, with the, what's his name, bad guy, and his best buddy. So Haidon or whatever. But anyway, yeah, there's great characters. And of course, Terra is just your, like, I don't know. I'm having I'm supposed to be arranging Terra's theme right now, and I'm like on version 9 or something, because like I think I nailed it the last time I did it, but I need to do it again, and I just because she doesn't. You know what? I'd like at the end. The ending has the greatest ending with that table, and it has little tchotchkes of everybody that represents them, and it's so good. But for Tara, it's just like a wine glass and a pearl necklace on it, and I'm like, what? When did that happen? You know what I mean? She's just basically walking around going, I want to know what love is. Like, that's really all there is to it. So I'm not sure. I mean, I really enjoy everybody.
Like I said, you know, like the storyline didn't really hit me as a kid as much as the rest of the game did. You know, the pretty pictures and the, you know, the fighting and the messing around with relics and seeing how you could break things, you know. I still do. I love the fact that each character had their own individual, like, special ability, even if they weren't all that good necessarily across the board. Even if they weren't if some were greater than others. I think Mog's dances are up there with, like, one of the worst things you could possibly, you know, add to a character in a game. I never understood. Oh, here's another thing. This goes back to the offensive spells versus, you know, buffs and debuffs. I never understood what runic was for Celis. Yeah. I didn't get it. Like, why would you ever do that? And that's why I never really used her. Going back and playing it again, I'm like, this is the best spell, like, ability ever. Like, this is so great. But to have Sabin and his really neat, you know, Street Fighter moves, to have Edgar with this, like, retinue of tools at his disposal. Shadow with his skeins and throwing things, and you know, I think it was my second time playing through when I realized, I don't have to sell everything. I can just throw it at people.
Yeah, it's really empowering when you realize that. It's like, this is actually really very, very effective to just toss into someone's face. This is fantastic.
And there were, you know, I was impatient, of course. So, you know, Cyan's ability kind of went out the door on that one. And Umaro, I even understood, was a novelty at that age. And Setzer's luck thing was, you know, that was pretty garbage too.
Not great.
But to have all those options, and then they give you a character that you can fully equip with all of those options. The super greatest, best character ever, Go-Go.
Go-Go. Gotta love him. I don't know how you figure out how to get Go-Go without Nintendo Power by your side. I don't know how you figured that out. You had the one kid in the class who had Nintendo Power and told everybody else. Because the idea of, like, hey, let's purposely let this, like, monster on this one little island, there's like a little island, suck you up and then go into his belly, and Go-Go just lives in a monster's belly. You realize that's what Go-Go does. Go-Go lives in a monster's stomach.
Yeah.
That's where he chooses.
In a monster's stomach. That's right.
A cave in a monster's stomach. That's where he is chosen to get his mail sent to. I don't understand this. I just realized how bizarre and strange the whole thing is.
I can absolutely remember too the first time that I went into, you know, that belly, the Zone Eater's belly, and this is how young I was. I couldn't figure out for the life of me the collapsing ceiling part. My brother had to help me get through that part because I just kept on getting crushed by the ceiling. And Henderstein, I was frustrated and almost in tears because I just couldn't figure this part out. You know, put on sprint shoes. That helps.
That helps a lot. Yeah, totally.
I mean, and there is a lot of reading too. Like I never understood the difference between sprint shoes and running shoes, so I never used running shoes. I didn't know what that meant. Like that didn't.
That's a really good point. Actually, that's a very good point. How would you? Go-Go's a wild character. Yeah, go ahead.
The going back, like Edgar's tools, getting the chainsaw, you know, and you know, learning the trick to that one. I mean, that was absolutely, you know, they give you all the clues technically in Zozo to figure out how to get that, but I was not intuitive enough to understand that at all. No. You know, it was someone had to tell me it was 6-10-50, and then I never forgot. You know,
to this day, evidently, you still remember it's 6-10-50. That's so funny. I love that. That's a memory. Yep, remembering that one for sure is a good one. Fantasy X. And we'll talk about Final Fantasy X at some point, but
Right.
but yeah, that's just really weird. Well, so that kind of goes into a character conversation. Then, which characters did you identify with in Final Fantasy VI, either at that time or even now when you play it?
There was definitely Celis. There was definitely Realm, in the sense of that. Even to this day, I have like a sense of childlike innocence. I still watch cartoons for the love of God. And that whole using painting as a way to get rid of the enemies was so cool.
Yeah.
I love the brotherhood connection between Sabin and Edgar. I used to use Shadow all the time. And finding that little side quest where... Remind me, he's Realm's father, isn't he?
He's related to Realm in somehow, some way. He might be Realm's father. Yeah, I might be right. Yeah.
So finding that character connection was amazing.
It's really wild. Yeah, it's
Terra trying to find herself and figure out who she is was definitely a big thing for me around that time as well, because I was starting to question my own gender identity.
Mm-hmm.
You have Gao is just one of the worst characters to play as. But I also love that idea of he is a child, so he'll just leave the fight. And sure, you're kind of telling him every once in a while to leave the fight.
Yeah.
But it's also go out and explore.
Yeah, and come back when you come back, which is neat. Which is neat thematically, but it's not terribly fun mechanically. I'm not a Gao fan. Me and Gao, we're not the best buds. But thematically though, it makes sense. And this is the era too of Final Fantasy where they really are thinking about character themes and character identity alongside the gameplay. Like Final Fantasy IV is a beautiful example of that, where all the gameplay ties into the characters. And Final Fantasy VI has some of that, maybe not as much as 4, but definitely has elements of it. And I think the series kind of goes away from that a bit as we move on, where it's more the stories and the mechanics are separate. But 6 still maintains that balance for sure. Yeah, Gao's funny. The Gao's an interesting. I don't know. I was never a Gao fan. I was like, I don't want to walk around the belt. This song is great.
Go-Go's fun though.
Go-Go's super
copying
fun.
Everything that you do.
Yeah, just copy Bum Rush and then do Bum Rush again. It's great. Just copy whatever Sabin does. Fantastic. What were some characters other than Kefka that you connected to when you played it of its time, or when you first played it?
I mean, the obvious right away is going to be Terra, because it's the first character you see. Mm-hmm. I think apart from that, it almost sounds like it's happening in order, but it changes pretty quick. But Terra and Locke, like right away, I liked them like right away, because Terra was like, I wanted to know what was going on with her, because you had no idea. And then Locke seemed like so heroic. I remember not liking Edgar at all, because as a kid, I just didn't understand his vibe. And then kind of everybody else kind of started like filling in the blanks, because even if I didn't like them, they all became a lot more likable later. And I think pretty much to this day, I don't think there's none of the playable characters are bad. Like, you can argue, like, I don't know, like Umaro, like the characters who have no lines.
Yeah.
But I can think of like really cool moments for like all of them. And I think that's a big part of what makes it hit hard for me. But as far as pulling me in, like initially, it's Terra, like 100%. And like the walk through the snow is like the first thing I think of when I think of the game, even more than Kefka. Like,
I totally agree. I played it of its release, and I had never seen anything like it. I didn't know games could do that. Like, I didn't know games could do this, and this is incredible. Totally agree.
Jumping ahead. Jumping ahead. Like, we got to the jumping to the opera. I didn't know games could sound like that. At the time. Like,
totally. That you could actually sing along to the 16-bit notes it's a miracle. It's actually a miracle that works, and it's fantastic.
Final Fantasy VI heavily features intense personal connections, and few resonated as deeply with my guests than the relationship between Edgar and Sabin. Whether they were the older sibling tasked with keeping a lineage alive, or a younger kid carving a future for themselves out from under the shadow of familial expectations, it's easy to see yourself in one of the brothers. To talk about the Edgar side of the equation is Julian from the Stage Select podcast, followed by J.R. Sommerfeldt of thepixels.com, and finally content creator Mekel Kasanova. Continuing on that vein, what characters did you identify with, again, either now or back when you played it for the first time? And not so much like favorite, but what are the ones that you felt like you had this kind of connection with?
That's a good question. Connection, like in that first playthrough, it was probably Edgar, because I have always had like a soft spot for like the rakish rogue, even though I didn't really know that that's what it was. But like, you know, I loved Han Solo. Like as a kid, like a little kid when I first saw Star Wars. And so having that like witty, you know, charming, debonair character, like I always loved him, like from the jump. Also Sabin, like they were definitely like my favorites, but also like the ones that I gravitated towards the most that first playthrough.
Final Fantasy VI really immersed me into the stories of characters that, quite honestly, I could kind of relate to. And specifically the brothers, Edgar and Sabin, that they, kind of their love-hate relationship that they had with each other is very similar to the relationship that I have with my own brother. And how, we would fight, we would scuffle, but in the end, we would always come together when things got hard. And that was kind of the connection that I had with Edgar. You know, he was kind of given the keys to the kingdom and did the best that he could. And in a way, being the oldest in my family, and I just have one brother, that was kind of the way that it was. You know, I was given the keys. It wasn't based off of a coin flip, of course, but
Of course, yeah, right.
but
There was that connection, though.
yeah, there was,
Interesting.
and kind of heavy as the weight of the crown, and that's kind of what I felt a lot during my days growing up, because I was the first, even my cousins were younger than me. And so all throughout growing up, everything was a new experience for my parents in raising me.
Do you remember any characters that connected with you when you played it for that first time when you were younger? Like, what characters do you think really like struck you then and now? I suspect they're probably different.
So, truthfully speaking, they're the same. The same characters hit me. So, the Figaro brothers really hit me hard. And the reason I say that, so I was a big Sabin, or however you want to pronounce his name.
That's fine.
I was a big fan of his when I was a kid because I could relate to him and how, like, you're in this family that has all these expectations of you. And it's like, you kind of want to do your own thing. You kind of want to carve your own path. I think you got Edgar, who kind of wants to do the same thing, but he knows he's, somebody's got to uphold the family tradition. And I could understand that, especially as, a Polynesian, as a Samoan, where, from my village, I'm from a village of chiefs in Mosula. And so traditionally, when you turn 30, you get your sleeve, and it's an indication of you being, of the, like a tribal heir, I guess you could say, or the line of it's coming of age for men. I'm 35 and I just started this like a month ago. So
looks cool. Yeah.
Very painful.
I can't.
Yeah. But it was one of those things where, like, with a lot of Samoan culture and everything like that, for the longest, I kind of struggled with like being part of it because I am the youngest of like 11 that I know of so far and counting.
Wow.
My dad spread his low high everywhere. Let's just put it that way. He's just like a very loving and giving man. But But I got to a point where, being the youngest and the expectations of the family, hey, you're gonna grow up, you're gonna do this, you're gonna be this, and it's just railing against it, call it teenage or youthful rebellion, whatever, or trying to figure yourself out. And I just really clicked with Sabin. He just his struggle, going his own way. And then, reuniting with his brother and their strained relationship, because I have an strained relationship with all my siblings. So like I really gelled with him. I gelled with him back then because as a, kid in the 90s, technically, if you really want to get technical, I mean, my dad is a U.S. citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen by way of my dad, but, being a immigrant for the most part, because I didn't speak English until I was like 6 or 7. And, I didn't really understand American culture, and especially going to the South where my dad's from. He's from Memphis. It was, really hard for me. I didn't fit in. I didn't really have a lot of friends, at the school. A lot of people thought I was weird being, like, what are you? So like, I really relate to that character and his dynamic. And then as an adult going back and I replayed it technically as a teenager. As a teenager, I replayed it on a PlayStation 1 anthology. I think that was the one that came out, or collection. So I played it on there.
Yeah, collection.
Yeah, so I played it on there, and I played it again on the Advanced series on Game Boy Advance, and I replayed it again on the Pixel remaster. And it's always been the same. I always relate to that character. There are other characters that I do relate with. Like I relate with Celis. I definitely relate with Locke and with Terra. But Sabin just...
Yeah.
Because Edgar reminds me of my brother Devin, the Playboy. Even though I got the non-diploma of Casanova, a lot of people are like, oh, Playboy. It's actually, interesting enough, that is a play on my grandfather's last name of Casanova. So.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Gotcha. Very cool. Continuing the conversation to talk about Sabin is Xerxex, followed by Ryan Lindsay of Kiss 105.3 in Ottawa, and finally Tim Knowles returns to the show. So Sabin is a character that you said you really connected with, and because you felt like you could it sounded like you can identify with Sabin a little bit. What about Sabin did you identify with back then?
I mean, it's just like back then, I was just, I was more or less a kid. I wasn't really like that complicated or whatnot. I was just like, he was like the martial artist. Yeah. I did martial arts at the time.
Oh, cool. Okay.
He was kind of like the no nonsense, like didn't want to deal with the drama kind of stuff. So like, I can relate to that as well. It's like growing up though, like when I look back, it's like I feel like personality wise, like less like Sabin and more like Edgar.
So that was my next question was, as you grew up and have played the game over and over, are you finding yourself more Edgar? More Edgar, maybe not so much the ladies' man aspect of it and everything, Fair. But just more along the lines of just like the, the being able, just being an adult, taking responsibility, taking responsibility of things, be willing to make sacrifices, that kind of stuff. Interesting. That's very cool. I always find it interesting when we replay these games when we're older, the characters we're attracted to just change, and I think that's a good thing and that shows growth. And I think that's interesting that as a kid, Sabin was just cool. All right, did the Street Fighter moves, and Sabin's awesome. But as you get older, Edgar is someone that you find yourself connecting more and more to.
Identified with Sabin and then some, because it took my love of fighting games and put it into an RPG.
Interesting.
Mechanics alone made me lose my mind. Suplexing a train is one of my favorite things in video game history ever. Possibly top, maybe just top 3, but I'm pretty sure it's the top.
It is so wonderful, and I think, and I'm not trying to be like hyperbolic or anything, I might have an emulator save file somewhere in the bowels of some computer somewhere that is saved right at that moment. So I can just go back and load it and suplex a train when things are not doing well. Like I'm having a bad day. You know what? If I'm having a bad day, at least I can suplex a train on command. I really do think somewhere, again, on some emulator, on some laptop is a save file that's right before that moment with the Phantom Train.
Save state 6 on my system.
See?
It's such a poignant moment to me. This is so nerdy. My wife's going to leave me now for how nerdy this sentence is. My office, which is approximately about, I want to say 35 feet from where I'm sitting right now. Okay.
Yeah.
In my office, there are pictures of my kids, pictures of my wife, some of the medals I've gotten for Extra Life Days over the years, a couple things from like record labels, some weird nerdy art. And then there is a printed picture somebody took the moment Sabin was about to suplex the train and turned it into like a traditional Japanese scroll. I don't know if you've ever seen the image.
I've not seen this.
I love it. It's one of my favorite things I've ever seen. I have a massive printout of it in my office that just says underneath any task in handwritten letters. And I've had
that's cool
in my field of vision every single time. I've only had an office, honestly, for about a year and a half of my career so far, but that has been the most prominent thing in there. I love it.
Final Fantasy VI, do you remember, obviously it's got a huge cast of characters, what character do you think you connected with the most as a kid, and has that changed over time?
Yeah, you asked me that. I saw that was in the pre-questions. It had me thinking about it. The little kid one was no question. It was Sabin. I always loved Sabin. I mean, that was a bigger little kid, you know what I mean? And he was the bruiser, and he was like the tough guy and everything. Yeah. And he got to do these really cool, unique moves, fire dance and air blade and aura bolt and pummel, suplex. You could suplex a train. I mean, come on.
What? That's awesome.
Unbeatable. And Mantra, the sound effect when he does Mantra was one of my favorite sound effects from that game. Like, I don't if you recall that one, but I'm
going to pop it in right here. Editor Bill, put this right here. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And it's funny too, because I'll watch these videos of the re-releases of the game and Final Fantasy VI and the new translations of them and everything, and they'll have these abilities and spells and enemies, and the names are all different because whatever the translation was for Final Fantasy III on Super Nintendo is what I remember. But I always have that place in my heart with Sabin. He's my boy. He's got his story is garbage. There's nothing like really profound about it or anything like that. He just didn't want to be a king, so he just learned how to beat people up. Yeah. His conclusion is that he learns the best way to beat people up.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome. And throw a Genji glove and offering on him and just let him hit things 8 times and just win.
Oh, don't forget to cast quick on him so he can do that twice. And cast quick,
just destroy. Yeah, Sabin was almost like easy mode.
You put that on and then go into that one forest where Tyrannosaurs and Brontosaurs spawn, and you just have Sabin go first every single time and just knock out. And those are the highest XP for quick leveling. And then you had the highest AP build was the Hoover and the Cactrots in the desert. Yeah.
Yep. Right.
I'll never
That's
forget
right.
these things. They're going to be my last
love
words
it.
on my deathbed.
I was gonna try. I was gonna say, speaking of deathbed, but I don't have a good transition for that because that would have been brilliant. I wish I was as quick as y'all are on the Leetist. We're on the Leetist, I should say. It is once again time to say thank you to our wonderful patrons, starting with Terry Kinnair, Games with Coffee, BT Goebbels, Julian of the Stage Select Podcast, Seth Sergil of All End Media, Tim, formerly of The Leetist, the Let's Play Princess, Greg Sewart of the Player One Podcast and Generation 16 series of videos, Philip Becker, and finally the one and only fabulous Pete Harney. If you would like to join these amazing human beings in donating your hard-earned funds to this podcast, then by all means go to patreon.com/agamerlooksat4040, check out the tiers, and sign up today. And if not, no worries. A rating, review, or even telling a friend about this series is always greatly appreciated. Thanks so much, and let's jump back into the episode. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know I like to keep things positive. Even when my guests are sharing intense stories, I enjoy a good positive spin because that's, quite frankly, hard to find out there on the internet. But for this Final Fantasy VI series, the demons of my lesser nature rose to the surface when the topic of one particular character was brought up. To talk about my least favorite character in all of Final Fantasy VI, and let's be honest, mainly listen to me complain about him, is Mekel, followed by Greg Sewart of the Player One Podcast and Generation 16 series of videos, then Ryan Lindsay, and concluding with Mustin. I have one character I can't stand, and it's probably one of my least favorite characters in games.
I think I know who. Is it Gao?
Oh, is it Gao? Oh, is it Gao? Gao is, I'm sorry. If you're a Gao fan out there, I respect you, and that's awesome. And I would love to hear why, because I don't find him mechanically fun. I don't find him fun to be around. I don't find his story. He's got an interesting side story when you get later on, when you kind of learn like a bit of his background. It was abandoned and all that. I think that's cool. But boy, oh boy, do I hate running around the Veldt trying to like jump into things and learn random stuff and then be berserked and not know what these things do. I cannot stand him going Gao Gao all the time. I just don't. What's your take on Gao? And I'm so very funny that you called it out of the 16 characters that you can be in Final Fantasy VI. Gao to me is the most repugnant, and I don't know. And this is a show based on positivity and good vibes, but boy, oh boy, that's got to be aired because I got a problem.
I never liked Gao. I think of all the Final Fantasy characters, there are two characters within the entire series, maybe three, that I'm going to be generous and say three that I absolutely hate in Final Fantasy series. It is Gao at number one. Number two is going to be Quina from Final Fantasy 9, and number three is going to be Yuffie. And I know there's a lot of Yuffie stands out there.
Wow.
But in OG7, I did not like Yuffie at all. I found her to be a useless character. I found Quina to be a very useless comic relief character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gao, I'm just like, you don't really add anything to the story. I mean, Shadow is a better character than Gao.
Oh, yeah.
Substantially.
Yes. Realm is a better character than Gao.
Yes.
At least Realm is interesting. She can do the sketching, and even though you get her super late and she's kind of useless when you get her because you already have like better characters, I'll still take Realm and Strago. I'm not a big blue magic person, but I'll take Strago over Gao. Gao just I don't know,
Yeah.
just did not work for me. I always regret. It's like I will say the music on the Veldt, that like jungle tribal theme, that's a jam. That is an absolute jam. I can listen to that for an hour, and you will if you want to level Gao, because you wander around that godforsaken plane with nothing in it but rando enemies that you just leap into and hope you absorb. Yeah, not a fun one.
I don't understand Gao. I don't know why anyone likes Gao. I was probably, you know me, I try to stay positive, but boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
I was just even mechanically, and that idea of got to catch them all like running around the Veldt. That music is awesome, but
It was ahead of its time.
it was,
Yeah,
but
you know,
yeah,
the Pokemon craze hadn't hit yet.
that's
So.
right. That's true. That's true. We were 4 years away from Pokemon hitting.
You're
the
right,
States.
though. Like that character. Speaking as someone who, when I played role playing games back then, and even now, I played. If I was going to grind, it was because I had to, not because I wanted to. Right. Where I think Gao definitely appealed more to the person who, like you said, got to catch them all.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is an element of the game. It's sort of an unofficial side quest, I guess. That I personally was not interested in. But maybe I guess that goes back to my previous point where I'm glad that he wasn't a super important character, because I didn't care to find all his abilities and everything. It just didn't do anything for me.
And the initial few will get you through just fine. And the end, that's really a strength of the game, in that you can say, well, I'm just not going to develop this character much. Or maybe, hey, let's just use magic on him mainly because, you know, I just don't feel like running around the Veldt.
It's funny. It's my last interview I did yesterday with someone about Final Fantasy VI. I went on a bit of a not a tirade and not a rant, but I shed some feelings about Gao and how much I loathe Gao.
Not a fan of Gao?
No, I am not a fan of Gao. I am not a fan of the Veldt.
Yeah.
That song's a bop. There's no question. That song is a bop, but that's interesting. You actually enjoyed that cycle
I
of
don't enjoy it.
leaping, and
I think it's brilliant.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Okay.
You're saying impactful moments. To me, that mechanic was so different than anything else in any other game that I was like, wow. You know, like, as much as I hate this, and again, I'm only going to use 2 of the rages, I respect that they put it in, because there's going to be completionists that are like, I'm going to spend 7 days on this thing. Like,
I will say I do have a least favorite character, and I think his story ends up being relatively interesting, but I really dislike Gao. I am not a Gao fan, and I think there may have to be a section of this podcast where I do just talk about my utter disdain for Gao. The music of the Veldt is very good, but I don't like berserk characters that you don't know what you're doing, and I just find him extremely annoying.
Yeah. Like we talked about, unpredictability is very scary. And Umaro and Gao have that aspect, and they're always the two that are left behind when I go to the final tower.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree with you on the story, but I never do the Veldt stuff. Yeah, I like the music.
No.
But the story of it is so tragic. I would love to talk to Imatsu about it, if it was like intentional or what. But that cello is so haunting for his theme, and it's just the antithesis of what his perception is. I mean, what you perceive him to be. It's this sad, slow thing, and once you go through the story, you find out what is so tragic about him. But on the surface, he's just this goofy goofball. Scrappy Doo kind of guy on this Velt with the cool music. But yeah, the whole game mechanic there, I don't do that.
Yeah,
All I
can't
do
it.
is
I can't do it.
I just start leveling him with all the simple espers, and then by the end of the game, he's like just doing quick and Ultima.
Yeah, it's magic. It's magic. I never had the patience for trolling around the Velt and randomly getting into battles. It just did not.
That's not how
it's not appealing at all.
And Gao, even though Gao, I know people hate Gao, but I like Gao because he's just feral and he's funny. And when you teach him all the spells, he's just as good as anybody else. But I do not do all that Velt stuff. That's not for me. There are people who are the complete type people, and that really gets their rocks off. And I'm glad that stuff is in there for them. But I'm also glad that it's not something that I have to do in order to really play the game. So I never learn a single thing except for when I have to go pick him up. The 2 times I have to pick him up.
Right.
I think it took years before I found out about taking him to the crazy old man and then having that side story where they like get him dolled up and they buy him the suit with the, the jacket with the coattails. And that was just heartbreaking, man, because again, with the abandonment and then my father and like, I felt it. And maybe that's part of the reason I have a feel for him. And I've never really loved his theme, but recently I arranged it and I turned it into like this real, like he's a badass, like synthwave, dark version of the theme. It's like, it really like, it's my emotion coming through and I really like it.
From an annoying feral child to a serious badass, time to discuss the mysterious ninja himself, Shadow. Starring in this section is the Let's Play Princess, followed by Mekel, and finally Mustin returns to the show.
Well, saving Shadow is just in the overworld. And it shows how much of a character connection you've already made with this character, that you're waiting on the Forgotten Continent. It's about to crash, and you know that, but you're not leaving without your pal.
And at that point, because you don't have the opportunity to save after Atma Weapon, so even if you think about it from a gameplay perspective, because it does say, do you want to wait for Shadow or do you want to go? The game is signaling to you, hey, if you leave without Shadow, there's going to be a negative consequence. But the result of that negative consequence, if the game were to actually end, you'd have to like beat Atma Weapon again. Like you'd have to do a lot of stuff over again. It's a weighty decision both from a gameplay perspective and from a story perspective.
No, I always saved him.
Oh, totally. You have to. You can't let him go. As much as Shadow and I have a contentious relationship, because for some reason in my playthroughs he always leave incredibly early. He'd always just bounce. Like, I'm done. Dude, what? What do you mean you're done? Give me my armor back at least or something. Nope. Gone. Out. It got to a point where when I was playing it, younger person, I would like save every 3 battles just because I knew he would leave at some point so I could keep him around for as long as possible.
Were you rotating saves at that point, or
no?
Did the Super Nintendo version have multiple save slots?
I believe it did, but I don't think I was rotating because I'm sure my brother had one and I had one, so we definitely weren't rotating. So I think I just kind of like every 3 battles I would save. He's still here. Cool, save. 2 battles, save. Cool, he's here. Okay. Oh, he ran away. Back up a couple. So I definitely did some of that for sure. I agree. It's even Shadow, who's a very ancillary character. When you start seeing his dreams and like some of his backstory when you're in the inns,
Like, it's really cool. And they have this like mysterious character who, by the way, I don't know what I did to Shadow. He's always bouncing on me, always leaving, always. Every time I played that game, I'd save every 5 minutes. I didn't want to lose Shadow because at one point he just peaced out. Oh, I'm off later. Dude.
And don't equip anything of value on him.
No, nothing of value. Don't give him any good relics. Don't give him anything that you can't just buy at the next town. For some reason, me and Shadow, he always would peace out to me after like 5 battles. And I don't know why. And it was always random, supposedly random, but I guess not for my cart. I don't know. I totally agree. And so who's of all the characters in Final Fantasy, which was the one you think you felt like you identified the most with? I mean, right now you mentioned Cyan, but what do you of the time or even now again, who do you identify the most with in that huge cast?
I don't know if I identify, but my favorite is Shadow.
Oh yeah.
And I mean I love dogs. I'm an animal lover. I'm anti-pet, and I do love dogs. I love that he has a dog is really cool in the game. It's very interesting. Having a pet, having a familiar, and then having it spill over into what is the Realm story. I always found that fascinating, only to grow up and considering my home life, never want to have kids, but I accidentally fell in love with this redhead with the 2-year-old and ended up adopting him. And now he's my son who lives with me. And I think it's interesting, the dynamic of what makes a family, seeing like how these characters make it work with like Terra and adopting the people in the Mobliz or something, that village.
Yeah.
And
Mobliz, yep. And finally, finishing up this episode is a smattering of comments about random characters we love, respect, and remember. Starting us off by talking about everyone's favorite bit character, General Leo, is Tim Knowles, followed by the Let's Play Princess. After them, Ryan Lindsay and James and JJ of RetroFits talk up Mog. And then finally, James finishes the episode by giving some love to arguably the most memorable octopus in all of video games. Did you ever attempt to resurrect General Leo? And what did your playground friends say? Because there were so many rumors of that time.
You know, I remember hearing about that, and I remember reading about it, I think, too. But I actually never went for it. I heard the rumors that you could play as General Leo, or that you could, somehow glitch the game into you being General Leo. But I never really went for that one. I don't think I bit as much. But that sword ability, I can't even remember what it was called that he did, where you just kind of swing it and like.
Oh, what was it called?
It had its really cool name.
Yes. Oh, hang on. We're gonna use the internet for this one. General Leo special move. Let's see. Shock. That was it. Shock. It was so cool. It had a cool sprite and animation for it. It had a cool sound effect. I was like, see, that would be cool. I would like to have that. It's like, if Gaw kind of had that as one of the rages he could learn, I'd settle for that. That'd be cool. Oh, kidding me? He would stay in my party. That'd be amazing if he just threw shock every other turn. That'd be fantastic. I love that, man. I love that.
I mean, I also love General Leo double crossing. You get to play as him for that one battle.
When you were younger,
it's so good.
When you were younger, did you try to get General Leo back? Did you follow all the breadcrumbs that your friends left for you? Like, because back when I was a kid, I played as pre-internet and of its time. The playground was full of people saying, "You can totally get General Leo back." Totally.
I didn't play the same games as everybody else, it turned out. Because I was playing Bowtie, Final Fantasy, all that stuff, and nobody else was playing that. They were all the Call of Duty kids. But looking up on Google, can you get Leo in your party? Yeah, I followed those breadcrumbs.
See, and there was no looking up back in my day. It was all friends. Oh, if you get all your characters to level 99 and you do this one thing and you show up at the gravesite with Realm or whatever, you can do this one specific thing and you got to hit the button 15 times and do this controller magic. You can get General Leo in your party.
Fly the ship this way, that way, almost like a cheat code, glitch it out. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll try it
because he's awesome. He is. That is such a cool moment when you feel like, oh boy, I'm gonna have this awesome person to my side, and he's very quickly ripped away from you. That's a great moment too. I love how cinematic Final Fantasy VI can be without the use of cinematics. You know, I love when Final Fantasy does things in the battle screen, like that General Leo scene. That's all done in a battle screen. Yeah.
Mog's dances. Oh.
Yeah, they're cool. Those are cool.
No matter how much I hate seeing him stumble, it still makes my kids pee themselves laughing when he does. That's an awful truth, okay? 7 and 10-year-old kids seeing him face first is one of the funniest things in our household while I'm screaming, just dance, you little punk.
I need the rock slide for God's sake, please.
Just, you're killing me.
Oh, that's really funny. Yeah, dance is fun. Mog is a really great character because he's not a comic relief character at all. It's just a very interesting use of kind of like the animal character in a video game where you actually do feel for Mog and you want to protect Mog and you want to protect all the little Moogles. Yeah. It's amazing how they were able to do that with a character who's basically nonverbal, who doesn't say much and is just adorable and cool. The fact and does those like really awesome dances.
Slapped him on all of the promo imagery.
Very good point.
That to me, merchandise. Later in life, we've seen it in so many other forms as we've gotten older. Perfect example, New Age Star Wars trilogy, the Porgs. The second they showed up, everybody wanted a Porg. I'm like, that's a Moogle. That's a Moogle. That's a Moogle. And I do that every time we see some super cute thing pop up from a franchise that then becomes like, everybody's got to have this. Everybody's got to have that. I'm like, that's a Moogle. That's a Moogle. That's a Moogle too.
Does Baby Yoda owe a debt of gratitude to the Moogle?
Baby Yoda's a Moogle, bud. Grogu it should actually be Mogu. Let's be real. And yes, I understand that Yoda came long before Moogles did, but Grogu is a Moogle and nobody will ever be able to tell you. Sorry. Put the little thing on top of his head, get him to say Koopa once, game over. I'll buy it right then.
Done.
Put it into perspective. As a kid, I fell in love with Moogles because of this game. Oh my Lord. Almost got a tattoo at one point in time. I was convinced I was going to do, this is ridiculous, but I was going to do a Dr. Pepper symbol on my right arm and a Moogle all the way down my left arm. It has never happened yet. Wow. But me still, because I love me.
Okay.
Dog is one of the greatest characters in any video game ever, and I will defend that to my dying days. Other characters in it, I mean, it's tough to say I identified with them, but you could see little pieces of yourself in every single one of them. And that was the difference from this versus 2. Now, again, there are games that existed in between there that in North America, most of us never got a chance to touch or see until much later in life. And we're like, meh, I get it. It's okay. Or yeah, that's brilliant. Oh, a job system. Like all of these things were fantastic to see in there. But every single character, there was one little piece of them that you're like, damn, that's me. Damn, that's me too. Ah, that's me. How is that me? Up until like Go tomorrow, but we're not going there.
also on Twitch as we do this as well. So Oatmeal Packet chimed in with some of his favorite moments.
Nice.
He writes, the best moment in Final Fantasy VI is when he took the gold hairpin, allowing the Moogle to fall to their death. There's a moment where I think it's like Lone Wolf. You can either save the Moogle or save Lone Wolf. And if you save Lone Wolf, you get the thing he steals, which is a useless gold hairpin. My man here, Oatmeal Packet. Let the Moogle let him go. Cold-blooded. But listen, I respect the hustle.
I could never let the Moogle go ever. Even when I was first playing, and I didn't know what the choice really meant overall. I was like, no, he's fluffy. He's adorable. He is Moogle friend.
He is.
You must protect him.
A source of constant cuteness and adorability, and yeah. It's hard to do, but Oatmeal Packet did it. That's it.
His whole deal is dancing to cause massive damage.
Well, Oatmeal Packet does chime in and say that he would have felt bad about it, but since gold hairpin allows you to, I think it's half magic points. I think that's what the item does.
Yeah.
That's that.
Getting that kind of early is a good get.
Early. It is a pretty good get. I respect it. Play over. Sometimes a Moogle's got to die for the sake of the better good. That'll be clip that. Clip me saying sometimes a Moogle has to die for the greater good. And now here we are.
Take that out of context.
Take that completely out of context, y'all. Fantastic. Thank you. No, absolutely.
If you look past Baron's lion's mane of a hairstyle,
love it. Yes, and the absolute goofiness that is Ultros, which is I love. Is he?
Oh yes.
Should I do it?
Do it.
So, an episode that we did when we found Realm and we named her, I just typed it in I was just like, JJ, guess what? And I typed it in. I was like, her name is Lisa. That's not going to pay off immediately, but it's going to pay off. And JJ, you knew what I was talking about, and you kept it under your hat for 10 episodes while we were waiting for her to get to the point where she faces off with Ultros and she beats him by painting a picture of him and showing him how ugly he is. And at the same time, I was so glad you kept it under your hat. We just went, "You're tearing me apart, Lisa!"
Well done. That is a setup. Listen. That's a setup, my friends. Well done. And good for you for not exposing that one. That is.
Oh, I so wanted to.
No, I could tell in the moment you were like, oh. Yeah. That kind of
nefarious. Yeah. I love that, man. Very, very good. That's awesome. Ultros is a great character. I love when Final Fantasy gets silly and goofy. And boy, oh boy, he embodies. He's not he's just a threat enough to make it feel good when you beat him. But boy, it's also a lot of fun to watch him fail. I really love Ultros as that goofy side character.
The first time
6 is one of the main ones where he has actual dialogue. Most of the others, he's just a random monster.
Just a random thing.
It's sort of like a throwback thing. Remember Ultros from 6? Here he is, and he's gone. But the first time you face him in 6, he's a legitimate boss. The thing that I love about him is that he never really grows in power. Because as the silly side character, one of the things is he doesn't really have character growth, so why should he have stat growth?
Exactly. That's a very good point. 7 episodes down, one more to go as we complete our journey through Final Fantasy VI. It only took 2 months. I warned you, this is an important game for me and really is for a lot of people. I highly doubt any other game in this series will have this kind of length, but I don't know. It all depends on my guests and their recollections, and
people have quite a few. And I am so thankful to be sharing those with you on A Gamer Looks at 40. Next week, we finish things up with a huge goulash, a random smattering of thoughts and opinions. It's the odds and ends episode. I did it a lot during the Legend of Zelda series. We will continue doing that here. Sometimes things don't fit an episode, and I want to get them out there because they're fun. And these episodes are just random stuff people said, and somehow, some way, I make a thing out of it. Thanks, as always, to Kev from the Discord and Pete Harney for their editing prowess, cutting up these interviews so I can build these shows. Thank you so much for your help with that. Thank you again to my patrons for their patronage, and thank you for checking out this edition of A Gamer Looks at 40. And until next time, just be kind to yourselves and each other.